Hello, welcome to Voice of Australia. It's day 6 of the election campaign, and after a week on the hustings, Tony Abbott is leading the race to the Lodge, with the latest Nielsen poll showing the coalition ahead 52 to 48% on a two-party preferred basis. Primary support for the ALP is down 2 points to 37%, while the coalition has gained 2 points to 46%. My guest is the Deputy Editor of the Sunday Telegraph, Claire Harvey. Claire, welcome.
Thank you.
So two-party preferred and primary support increasing for the coalition?
Yeah, the same thing's reflected in a Galaxy poll that we're publishing in the Sunday Telegraph tomorrow and in News Corp Australia's Sunday mastheads around the country. These things are always a little bit hard to judge when they are such slight movements, especially in Galaxy, which is a sample of 1,000 voters. But they're still worth having a look at, especially in the heightened environment of an election campaign. So the poll that we're publishing tomorrow shows that Labor's primary vote is down 2 points in the past fortnight to 38. The Coalition's is up 1 point to 45. And on two-party preferred, it's now Labor 49, Coalition 51.
Okay, so a little bit closer than the Nielsen.
A little,
still.
yeah.
Is there anything in there that's interesting, sort of specific to the leaders, or is this
There
just
is.
more...
We asked the voters what they think are the greatest weaknesses of both leaders, and we gave them a fair few options, but there were pretty overwhelming results. For Kevin Rudd, 31% of voters said that his record in government was his greatest weakness, which suggests that people haven't forgotten the old Kev. Interestingly, for Tony Abbott, the greatest weakness cited by 28% of voters was that he's not Prime Minister material. So in something that I think the Coalition will regard as a good point, Mr Abbott, only 9% of voters said that they thought Mr Abbott was a misogynist or had a problem with women. 21% thought he was too negative and 21% thought he was hiding his policies.
That argument really seems to have sort of died down, obviously, since Kevin Rudd's taken over again. That whole campaign around misogyny just seems to have gone away.
Yeah, I think possibly Labor's internal polling is reflecting something similar to what we're seeing here, actually, and that's probably why it's probably quite a smart move. I guess it's just not resonating with voters in the way that perhaps Julia Gillard thought that it would. Tony Abbott made some very concerted efforts to be out there being a friend to women. He's got his daughters out with him at every opportunity, as you will have noticed. Who are very beautiful, so it's no surprise. Yeah. But on the Kevin Rudd side, interestingly, only 9% of voters thought that allegations of corruption within the New South Wales Labor Party were Kevin Rudd's greatest weakness. So whether that's because they think he has many other weaknesses, or whether they're not that surprised or that bothered about New South Wales Labor's problems, I don't know.
One of the big stories around it was in a lot of the News Corp papers today. These two candidates, Jeff Lake in Hotham and Ken Robertson in Kennedy. Kevin Rudd's now to do with sort of, I guess you'd call it conduct unbecoming. And Kevin Rudd is now called for sort of his leadership team to have a look, to have a review of those candidates. And there are certainly calls for him to oust them as he's done and possibly have some more captain's picks.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The old captain's pick is a terrible bind for leaders, I think. In Tony Abbott's case, we're seeing the problems created when you don't have a captain's pick. He stood back in Western Sydney and let Jamie Diaz be pre-selected, and we all saw his implosion on Channel 10 earlier this week. That doesn't mean that Jamie Diaz is a bad candidate. It just means that perhaps he wasn't put through the X factor rigour that a leader might put a potential candidate through when they're deciding on someone. Captain's picks can really blow up in a leader's face, but perhaps sometimes it's worth being a bit brutal.
Just quickly, because also on the candidate trail today we've had Stephanie Bannister, speaking of implosions, that candidate for One Nation, who there's some controversy around whether she really does think that Islam is a country or whether it was edited in that way to make her seem that's what she thinks. But she's it would have to be one of the shortest political careers in history, because she's now pulled out of the race as well.
Yeah, she lost the support of Pauline Hanson very early on, and I frankly doubt that interview was edited to make her sound like an idiot. She may not be an idiot. She may have just been having a bad day, but I'm very loath to believe it when politicians say they've been taken out of context.
There has been some talk of policy. It doesn't sound like it the way, but there has been some talk of policy around today. Specifically, Tony Abbott up in the Northern Territory talking about what he wants to do to improve land rights for Indigenous Australians.
Yeah, he says he wants to be regarded as an Indigenous Affairs Prime Minister. Tony Abbott's had a long and very deep commitment, personal commitment to Indigenous affairs. He always goes and spends a week in far north Queensland or the Northern Territory. He has done that for the past sort of 6 years or so. He's up at the Garma Festival today in Yolngu land, and he's taken along with him Warren Mundine, the former ALP president, who's his trophy new best friend.
Yeah.
And is very proud of the fact that not only has he got a scalp there in terms of a new friend, but he I think genuinely believes that Warren Mundine is the right person to bring together the sometimes very fractious world of black politics.
Yeah. Moving on, the official polls may have Tony Abbott growing in popularity and his party leading the campaign. But in the Twitter sphere, the week was won, albeit marginally, by Kevin Rudd. Our social sentiment tracker, Jackson Goth-Snape, explains why to Ashley Leal.
Jackson, we've had the first week of the election campaign and you've been tracking the two major leaders, Kevin Rudd and Tony Abbott, on social media. Who do you think has come out on top?
Well, it started well for Abbott. Launched the campaign on Sunday. Very positive discussions around Tony Abbott early in the week, but as the weeks progressed, Kevin Rudd seems to have enjoyed a more positive debate generally on Twitter, and this is all according to Poll Pulse, which is our feature of all our websites that tracks performance on Twitter.
Explain to me how that tracking technology works exactly.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Twitter sentiment, as we call it, generally is really good for giving us overall snapshot about people's performances, and it's excellent for identifying early what's the mood within the public about whether it's an issue or a particular person. But we've got to remember two things about this kind of stuff. Sometimes Twitter can be seen as somewhat biased towards the left wing. Academics and commentators generally agree that there is a bit of a left wing bias. So when we say Kevin Rudd might have performed better this week, it's by no means a disaster for the coalition. And the second thing is Tony Abbott and Kevin Rudd, they have almost a celebrity status, and so what it means is one significant tweet or one major performance can have a really profound impact on their performance within this social media sentiment. So for example, Tony Abbott at the start of the week sent out a tweet to launch the campaign calling on his supporters to retweet, and it was a positive message. It was retweeted more than 1,000 times, and that was part of his spike early in the week. Equally, during the week with Kevin Rudd, the announcement around the before and after schools programs, he sent out a tweet that was retweeted more than 100 times, a positive tweet, and again that's reflected on the overall graph.
Well, we'll see what happens in this second week. Thanks, Jackson.